Welcome back to Phantom Empire. We are taking some time tonight to sit down and talk about Jon Watts and Lucasfilm's Star Wars Skeleton Crew episodes 1 and 2 debuted almost 2 hours ago live on Disney Plus. No, the Star Wars Wastelands podcast is not back. It's just what we've named our Star Wars segment on our Phantom Empire live show. So we debuted with that. Without further ado, though, my partners in crime, we have done, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. We have done the Acolyte. I don't remember what came out before the Acolyte earlier last year.
Ahsoka?
Was it Ahsoka? No, Ahsoka was the year
Yeah.
before. Or no, yeah, last year. Sorry, I'm getting my years confused. So yeah, we've done the Acolyte and Ahsoka together, and now we're doing Star Wars Skeleton Crew, and we are joined by the man behind Zach Arnold Productions, and you might have guessed it. It's Zach Arnold. What's going on, buddy?
Zap. Football season just ended not too long ago, so I'm kind of in a down period until February, which is honestly kind of nice. I might pick up the occasional standalone thing here and there, but to be able to take a little breather during the holiday season is really, really nice. And I've got some personal things that I've been kind of dealing with behind the scenes that would require potentially some surgeries and stuff like that. So like this end of the season is happening at the right time for me, just to be able to take the little bit of a break and take care of some personal business before things get crazy again. But always excited to be on for an hour and a half, chatting it up with you guys. Excited to be here.
And also joining us, they will be here over the course of the next, if my math serves me right, however long Phantom Empire Live goes this time around. But the Skeleton Crew review show that we're doing, I guess we got, what, 6 weeks left? Is that right? Am I mathing right? 8 episodes? Yeah, 6 weeks left. And I don't know if they'll have a Christmas break or not, or if they'll just keep putting up the episodes or what. That hasn't really been revealed yet, I don't think. But from Bros, before Pros, not Hose, Johnny, what's going on, buddy?
Not a lot. Honestly, it's been a.
It's Pros, right?
I'm
Not
excited.
Hose.
I'm excited. No,
you
you're right. You're good. You're good.
Yeah, you
I'm
haven't
excited.
changed the
Indiana
content?
Jones next week. I'm excited for that one.
Man, I wish it was coming out on PlayStation, because if it was, I would totally stream that to the channel. The fact that it's not, though, maybe you and I can get together and we'll just steal some of your footage and put it up on the channel.
There will definitely be some bros before pros for Indiana
Now, I
Jones.
do believe it's coming out on PlayStation, but not for like, what is it?
Not until next year at some point.
Yeah,
Is what we're hearing.
late next year, I believe. It looks good, though, and to know that Lucas and Spielberg had some involvement in the story, that intrigues me a lot more. Also joining us, he's our co-host over at Fandom Empire Live. He's been part of the Star Wars content here. It's Randy. What's going on, buddy? How's the X-Wing doing? You looking for a power converter?
Yeah, well, unless those damn kids steal mine. Anyway, doing pretty good here. Had myself a nice long break, which was needed. But back to the daily grind today. But it was a nice little surprise to get the premiere pushed up a day, and I can't wait to get into it.
I still don't understand why it was moved up one day to just another weekday. Like that might be my biggest complaint about this debut and about this drop is if you really wanted that many eyes on it and it was ready as much as a day early, it could have been ready 2 or 3 days early. Put it out during the US holiday, put it out during the weekend, and people would have been much more casual about, oh, hey, this is on. I'll pop it on and give it a look see. The numbers are staggering for people at the theater over this Thanksgiving holiday in the US. One of the most highest attended Thanksgiving weekends with stuff like Gladiator 2 and Moana 2 and stuff like that in theaters. Wicked. There were just so many things to see, and like
Huge weekend.
Dozens of millions were poured into the cinemas this weekend. People wanted to consume media during this holiday weekend, and you don't jump on that trend, it's just, it doesn't make sense to me.
You and I were talking off air, and I was just like, I don't understand. Like, why are we releasing it on a Monday and then do it like if they were like, okay, we're gonna do all of the Skeleton Crew on Mondays, I'd be like, okay, well, I guess that's the day you picked. But it's going back to Tuesdays next week, right? Like, I do not understand. Like, is tomorrow a significant day that I don't know about somewhere in the world, in the states, maybe?
12/3.
Like, I
No.
didn't understand it.
Nope.
That being said, we are here to talk about Star Wars Skeleton Crew from Jon Watts and Company. Fantastic directors list on this show. That being said, I just want to take literally a minute to talk about a lot of what's been out there about this show. So this show has been, I'm sure they've made tweaks and adjustments to it and stuff, but this show has been ready for a year. This show was supposed to come out before The Acolyte and just after Ahsoka. And for whatever reason, there was issues, and everybody was talking about, Doomsday and child actors and an inability. I do know they had an inability to do reshoots, so that caused some issues. But like you, I don't want to tip my hand here, but like it's just there was a bunch of drama online, and like I wish I could say it was from like mom and pop shop podcasters and stuff, but like significant people in the industry, people in Variety, people at the Hollywood Reporter, people at Collider. Um, it was doomsday for the show right from the get go. So I must sit here and ask, fellas, just pros for this, or maybe instead of pros, initial impressions, which isn't in the notes, but what did all of you, and we'll go left or right on this, what did all of you think about Skeleton Crew? I didn't have a ton of hype heading into it. It was like, okay, well, it's a Star Wars show. My expectations are really friggin' low. Um, and I didn't find my excitement growing the closer we got. But I sat down and watched it tonight with the wife. Randy, we'll start with you. Initial impressions.
Well, I, obviously, like you, I wasn't super hyped because we've seen where super hyped gets us, and obviously the Acolyte kind of ruined any type of true lead up to this. But sitting down and watching it, and episode one, it did exactly what episode one does. It's introduce the characters, give you the personalities. And the thing is for what it is, for what this first episode was, and I know we'll talk about the second episode later, but for what this one is, I didn't hate it. And I was intrigued enough that I was ready to consume episode two right away. Obviously, they gave us some little nods here and there, and some of the music was really well done, but ultimately, yeah, it's a first episode. It did enough for me to really just get myself ready to kind of consume more.
Johnny, what about you, man?
For me, initial thoughts. I don't get too much into what would be my pros and cons of the episode, which are a lot of what my initial thoughts sort of go towards. But it, you know, I'll say this, and it's an initial thought, and it's unfortunately one I have far too often in the Disney years. There wasn't enough. There wasn't enough, and that's a time issue, not so much a content issue, but a time issue. I mean, you come out with the first two episodes, and your total runtime was sub 90 minutes for the first two episodes. That's just, I'm not happy about that, with the presentation style. I'm not happy about the length. That's my initial thought. I wanted more meat on the bone. I wanted more establishment of the story. And, I have far too many questions right now. and they're questions I probably shouldn't have coming out of the first and second episode of this series. They're questions that should have had answers ahead of time in some form or fashion, and I don't, it'll be interesting to see where they go with it and if they can answer these questions with throughout the course of the series or not. But, you know, it sounds like there's a lot of negative in there, but overall I enjoyed it. And had this been a movie, I think it would have been much better. But, it's how are they going to flesh out the story? How are they going to make it work over the rest of these episodes? And was this an idea that was just better suited to be a movie? I don't know yet, but we'll figure that out in the next few weeks.
Zach?
Yeah, I mean, trying to go through initial impressions versus pros and cons is probably a little tough to do because there is some bleed over there. Um, but I think my initial impressions can probably be summed up best in my Facebook and Twitter post. I said that I feel that they did take time to establish characters better than some other shows have done. So I said they took time to establish characters. They added mystery and intrigue to childlike wonder and adventure. They built on the universe with new worlds rather than rehashing old tropes. Star Wars Skeleton Crew is ... actually good with a question mark. There are some good things going for this show, I feel like, and maybe that's because there were low expectations. Maybe that's because I feel like they blended some of those Goonies and Stranger Things type adventure tropes that they were going for. Maybe the comedy was right for me. I'm not exactly sure what resonated with me specifically, but I found myself enjoying these first two episodes. And like Randy, I was ready to see episode 2 almost immediately. Like my wife wanted to stop and talk about the first episode, and I was like, not now, I got to push episode 2. And so like I enjoyed it enough to watch them back to back. I enjoy it enough to watch it again next week, and obviously enjoyed it enough to hop on here and talk about it on a platform. So it I feel like it's a solid start. There's obviously plenty more to build on and establish, but for a pilot and for a second episode, I think it did what it needed to do.
Yeah, like I said, I went in with you just mentioned it, very low expectations. I'm definitely someone who's fallen or is guilty of wanting, you hear about a show that's taking place in the same. I believe the show is meant to line up with Mando season 3. We did see a
Yes.
Mando season 3 villain
Yes.
in the second episode.
Yes.
But it's easy to go, well, where's Ahsoka? Maybe they'll end up there. Or, where's Mandalorian or whoever? And I got to tell you, right out of the gate, this is the most fun I've had with a Star Wars project, probably since Ahsoka, which might not seem that far ago, but when you think that that's
Since
last
2 shows
August,
ago.
right? But I think it has the potential to be, well, again, if they're one and done, then I guess there's not potential. But it was enjoyable. It was fun, right? And I think that's key. Is I don't know if Star Wars has been very fun lately at all, to be honest. You know, and I thought they brought the fun back, and I was really worried with some of the stuff that had come out for a year now about the child cast that I'd be really pushed away by them, but like I thought they were all good. I'm intrigued, and I don't know if the first 2 episodes specifically, while talking our initial impressions, I don't know if it could have landed better than what it did, considering where my expectations were. So this Canadian ended his viewing pretty happy. Like I will say this before we dive into the nitty gritty of episode 1. When you look at like where we go in those 2 episodes and the presentation and the pirates and the ships and everything going on and some of the world building, like you could envision future Star Wars stories taking place where some of this groundwork has been laid. And it was decent, you know. I wish I could relate to Goonies, but I don't like Goonies, right? Never have. Um, so I know a lot of people are calling it that. I've never seen Stranger Things, so I can't relate to it. I will say this: it felt a little bit to me like Pirates of the Caribbean in space.
What
Not as good as
qualifies you to
Pirates of the
be on this
Caribbean,
pod, sir?
but pardon.
I'm just gonna come right out and say it. Like, what the hell qualifies you to be even talking about this? If you didn't like Goonies and didn't watch Stranger Things, have you heard of a little thing called ET? Do you know what Stand By Me is?
Yes,
Like, I
yes.
could go on and on. Like, what the
I know E.T. and Amblin and all that, and they're good. I don't know. I just was never a Goonies guy. So my wife feels the same way, man. She probably wants to plug me right now, just even saying it in the same house as her.
I don't think your lack of Goonies love is the only reason she wants to plug you right now.
No, probably not. Probably a long list of material.
I will echo your sentiments though. I did get some Pirates of the Caribbean and space vibes too, though. There were many different elements that I felt like they incorporated, and while some may feel like it's like borrowing too much from one or too much from another, I felt like they were more like homages in the Star Wars universe more than direct stealing. Although the little girl, what's her name, KB, I think, the blonde girl. She's literally wearing Geordie's visor.
I was gonna say the Geordie visor one. Yeah,
that was something I had a hard time getting past, but she ended up being useful, and it actually served a purpose rather than just she's blind type of thing. So I can live with it.
Jade mentioned it also gave her Treasure Planet vibes, which I would agree with. I haven't seen that in a very long time, but
the robot, very steampunk. Yeah, I can see that. What is it? SM-33? Yeah. SM-33 is very steampunk. I can see that.
That's Nick Frost doing that voice too. Yep. I'd have to. Is it? Yeah,
Shaun of the Dead. Yes, sir.
That's a voice I'd know anywhere.
He's so good in that movie. I love that movie. Underrated gem. All right, let's get into it. Pros for episode 1. Don't go too deep, but we'll go around the table here and we'll start with our guest. Zach, give us your pros from the pilot, man.
Well, I mean, we kind of touched on it a little bit. Was the fact that this show knows what it's about. It's a childlike adventure, and you're seeing it through the eyes of what's supposed to be the everyday young adventurer. You've got kids that are pretending to be Jedi, and you've got the pressures of the world, about to be decided for you. And what if you just want to be a kid for a little while? It's got some of that childlike whimsy to it, but at the same time, you kind of relate to, oh crap, I don't have time to be a kid. I have to start learning how to be a grown up. Like, I think we all experienced that at some point. And so it was geared to a younger audience, but still accessible. And when you're able to do that with your storytelling, it opens the door for some of those homages to take place, like what we were talking about. The space bikes reminded me of the bikes that they rode in ET, and there were some elements of suburban life that reminded me of other movies that explored suburban life to an extreme detail. Even the movie It has a little bit of that riding your bike through the neighborhood type of thing. And so there were a lot of different 80s style movies that I felt like they were borrowing from, but they were able to modernize it and incorporate some Star Wars like elements like droids and hovercrafts and things like that in order to remind you what universe it's in. And so I think that would be the two biggest pros for me, was its accessible storytelling and its blending of 80s storylines with modern Star Wars.
So funny that you brought up It, because that was another comparison I was going to throw out. Obviously, it's not horror, but I was getting.
But the day in the life,
from the kids,
the day in the life in a small town, and I really think, what's his name? I forget, the kid who's asthmatic in the first It movie. The one who's like,
it
we
goes up
should
there.
we should go home, guys. We shouldn't be here. We shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't go in the haunted house. That was pretty much Neil's character. It's like, I want to go home to my family, guys. I don't know if I want to be here. I'm going along because of the peer pressure, but I don't really think we should be here. That was basically Neil's character in this first episode.
Yeah, it's bang on, man. Did you have anything else you wanted to bring up in
No,
terms of your pros?
I've taken up enough airtime, so shut up and move on. Sorry.
Johnny, how about you, man? Pros.
I mean, I think finally seeing suburban Star Wars is a huge pro. You know, to this point, the only Star Wars we've ever seen has either been like the bustling metropolis, like Coruscant, or the barren wasteland like Tatooine. We've never seen suburban Star Wars, and it's a whole new experience, you know, and getting to see it in a way that is relatable. Like Star Wars has always sort of been unrelatable in a sense because everything is so otherworldly and out there, whereas this felt, you know, like the existence of an everyday kid. You know, you get up, you get on the bus, you play with your friends, you pretend to be Jedi. You know, those were things we did as kids. You know, like all of that was relatable in a way that Star Wars has never been before, and that is a huge pro. Um, it just I loved all of that. That suburban Star Wars. That's my pro for this episode. It's the most important thing for me in this episode is making Star Wars relatable to everyone. Everyone can relate to that episode because it was so normal, so real. Like, yes, it was in space and they had hover bikes and, you know, droid bus drivers and all of those things, but it was still relatable as an experience. So that's the most important pro for me of this whole thing so far.
Yeah, no, there's a lot relatable there. I'll touch on it when it gets to me. Randy, what about you, man? Give me some pros from episode 1.
So it's hard to, I mean, to add on to what Zach and Johnny said. I think what they said was very well done. So I'm going to throw out some different ones here. Obviously, I'm like, you know, the setting was huge. I liked the creature work in terms of the creature, the you know, just the litany of races that they showed. The music was pretty spot on. That's always important in Star Wars. This music felt like Star Wars, and that's always a huge bonus in any way, shape, or form. I felt like the kids had fairly decent chemistry for just being introduced to them, and they're all distinct, which is always memorable. And I know we haven't really hit on it yet, but that opening scene, just the grittiness of just the pirate attack, I really enjoyed them just kind of going there with that.
Yeah.
Just the setting and the ruthlessness, and just showing what type of dangers really are out there during this time. Even though, yes, it's during Mando 3 essentially, but we get to actually see the real side of it versus what we saw in Mando 3, whereas, you know, Din doing his thing. But ultimately, just, you know, the pacing was good for this. Like it didn't feel like it went too fast. The first episode didn't feel like it went too fast. It didn't feel like it was too slow. It felt just right to give us an overall encompassing idea of the kids, their personalities, and their potential for growth. And obviously, other than that, the rest of I'll wait till we get to episode 2 for the rest of my pros, because there's definitely some stuff I want to touch in on there.
If I can echo the opening sequence just really quickly, it's always entertaining when Star Wars mimics itself. You know, you've got the people defending their vessel from pirates in a very reminiscent way of the rebels defending Tantive 4 from Darth Vader. You've got a helmeted figure choking the captain of the vessel, asking, you know, if this is just a transport ship, why do you have your airlock sealed this way? Why is your vault pressure sealed? If this is a consular ship, where is the ambassador? Like, those types of mockery questions from a helmeted figure was funny. But then, if I can take it one step further, when they open it up and they find just one credit inside the vault, there's two things that mimics. One of those being the Dark Knight, when the Joker leaves behind the imprinted bills and takes the rest of the money, and he leaves just a few dollars behind in the vault that he robs. The other one being Treasure Island, which I think is more what it was trying to mimic, because in Stevenson's book, they make it to the island and they get to the treasure spot, but Ben Gunn has taken all of the treasure somewhere else and left behind just 2 guineas. So these pirates get to what they believe to be a treasure haul and find just 1 credit. And they mutiny, much like they were ready to mutiny against Long John Silver in Treasure Island. So there were a lot of storytelling parallels in just those first few minutes that I thought were really interesting.
Yeah, you beat me to it, man. I thought like a lot of
Dang,
people,
sorry, dude.
a lot of people love to compare The Force Awakens to A New Hope, and elements of the beginning and sending BB-8 away with the plans and stuff. And like, I get it. There's definitely some nods there, and the way that movie's constructed is definitely kind of constructed in the same vein as A New Hope. But I thought the way Skeleton Crew did that opening sequence was the best nod to A New Hope's beginning I've seen yet. Like the ship at the beginning, it's a different angle, but it's coming in. The pirate ship gets it right from, whoever's on that ship, not the pirate ship, but the other one. They're setting up just like the rebels in A New Hope, and everybody starts coming through. And the masked man, who I can only assume is Jude Law, um, is not that I know that, it might not be, but it sounded like him under the mask.
It definitely
Yeah,
is.
yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I
like,
said to
why?
Jim, like, that's Jude Law, right?
I mean, if we're gonna be doing spoilers, I'm gonna do a episode 2 spoiler. Why else would he be in his mutineer's brig for as long as he was?
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it could end up being someone else, but to me, it sounded a
There's
lot
no
like
there's no
Jude Law.
doubt.
Yeah,
There's no
okay.
doubt in my mind.
Okay, well, that's good. I wasn't completely off there. But like, I was just the way that they had the nod to the original Star Wars in that sequence was as pure and genuine as they have ever done in the Disney era. And let's not forget, like, Jon Watts is coming off of a very successful Spider-Man trilogy, right? Like, this dude knows what he's doing, to some extent anyway, and working with the Disney group and all that. I thought another one of those nods in that opening sequence was in terms of like the one credit being in there, not in terms of what's going on, but in terms of if that is Jude Law and his response to it. Felt a lot like Han on the Falcon when the hyperdrive kept failing in Empire, and he's just like, it's not my fault," right? It definitely felt a little bit like that. But pros for me is I was worried because Johnny had sent me a message before it started about the visuals. I'm like, oh God, no, I cannot have another Acolyte or Obi-Wan Kenobi or Mando season 3 where it just feels small. Say what you will for this show, it does not feel small. And I do know they used a little bit of stagecraft in it, with it, but a lot of it is location and blue and green screen stuff. So, like, for me, just the acting was good. It didn't feel small. It was fun. Like I said off the beginning, not for the lack of better words, it was fun, and I appreciate that. Um, let's go to our cons. Do we have any cons for episode 1, Zach?
I've been the host of the Intergalactic Peace Coalition for so long that my goal is usually to try to find the silver linings and not the clouds. And in some shows, it's easier to spot the clouds. in this one, it's a little bit harder for me. I don't know if I have any real serious complaints. I feel like if I hear some of the gripes that you guys have, I may echo them and be like, oh, yeah, you're right. I did kind of feel that way. I did kind of notice that. But I don't really have any complaints about the acting. I don't have many complaints about the visuals. I don't have many complaints about the writing or the storytelling or the world building or, a lot of the things that I usually pay most of my attention to. Some of them were probably average, and I guess in some cases you try to hold Star Wars to a higher standard than just average. But everything that they did, conceptually, storytelling, visually, musically, acting, it was all, to me, average or slightly above in some cases. And so I'm not to say it's a perfect show. I'll probably have it, below a 9 for sure, but probably higher than a 6. And so it's kind of in that average range. And so yeah, I don't know if I have any specific complaints, but like I said, I may echo if any of you guys have something specific you want to knock on.
Johnny, any cons from episode 1?
I think for me, the biggest con is, and this is one that is sort of limited to a first episode issue because, it is something I'm sure is going to be explained more as we go on. But for the first episode, I would have liked more on this planet they're on. At as a planet is something I would have liked a bit more depth to what it is. Like even if it's like from everything you see in episode 1, I'll leave a bit more, but to say in episode 2 you learn more about this planet than you learned in episode 1, as far as its place in the world, and since obviously we're going to be talking about it, that to the world at large it doesn't exist. It's a myth. It's it's the Bermuda Triangle. But like I would have liked more of that in there. Like, even if it's just sort of a throwaway in that opening sequence where you're sort of doing like the pirate thing, and if somebody mentions the treasure planet, and something, just some sort of head nod to that in a way that you don't really, because you don't get them really naming the planet until they need to go back to it. Like, and that alone would have been a good reveal to have that, where you've had this reference to this, lost treasure planet that doesn't exist. They're pirates. They make jokes like that all the time. So making a joke like that in that opening sequence would have expanded a bit more on that reveal at the end that this is just a planet that doesn't exist. Nobody knows where this planet is. I would have liked more of that early to set the hook. So that when they pull that line back and you're like, oh shit, it's real, that's where they are, and you've seen it, would have been a better, for me anyway. That's my only negative, is we didn't build up this planet for its importance coming.
Yeah, I get that. I think for me, I think the focus was more on trying to get us to know the characters in episode 1, which, dare I say, Acolyte did no job at all, meaning not a good one, at really helping us to get to know the characters the first couple episodes. It just kind of threw us in there, and it is what it is. I could see the planet being some sort of significant secret dating back to the Empire days. Like, I think they gave us enough in the first 2 episodes. I know we're talking about episode 1, but to go, all right, something's not quite on the level there. Something's going on. And it's more than treasure too. It's not just because of treasure. Something is not on the level there, and I just
Help
think
me
it's going to
God
take
if this
some.
turns into some sort of planet that Palpatine has cultivated to be his cloning place, or it has some. If this somehow ties back to Palpatine, I'm flying to everywhere
Dude.
and punching faces.
Dude, what if it's like The Island? where
like the Ewan McGregor,
the Ewan
Michael Bay
McGregor
movie?
movie, where
Yeah.
they're all living a normal life, but it turns out they're just parts to be harvested for the Empire.
Wow.
See, when you
I
say
mean,
the
I could
island,
get
my
on
mind
board
went
with
to
that.
Lost, and I'm like, okay, I guess. And then he's like, I've never
I
actually
mean,
seen that movie.
it could.
I
could
So I
wouldn't
didn't-
be
I didn't get there.
surprised if in some way it connects to Palpatine, though, simply because that's
Well,
the era of
I hope
storytelling
not.
we're in, right? With the Mandalorian, and I know I'm forgetting other ones.
but if I can skip ahead to episode 2 for just a second, everybody was excited at the currency that the kids had, calling it an Old Republic credit. So this planet could be pre-Empire. And if it is, could it go as far back as, say, the High Republic? Could they be tying it into stuff from pre-Phantom Menace if they're
I think
talking
they
about
call it a
Old
high.
Republic?
I don't think they say Old Republic credit. I think we are, at most pre-Clone Wars. I think.
But it's at least likely to be pre-Empire.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's. I think there's stuff going on for sure. We just haven't gotten there yet. I'm guessing those will be the big
absolutely.
reveals.
Yeah.
Randy, what about you? Did you have any cons in episode 1?
So usually when I watch anything, if I pick my phone up, means there's usually something wrong that I'm not happy with, or that I feel like things are moving too slow, or it's just not keeping my attention. I'm not gonna lie, this episode I didn't touch my phone. I literally kept it down the entire time and paid attention through the whole thing. So that, with that said, I don't, if I have any cons, it might be just maybe little nitpicks here and there. Nothing too crazy, but I'm also not saying it's a perfect episode. It's, you can have a good episode, but it not be perfect. Like just little things, like just little, maybe some comments here and there, or just some of the dialogue was, to me, wasn't perfect, but it fit the scene. But to me, it just kind of was just like, it didn't add anything. Like some of the stuff with just the school stuff, like I was just like, okay, I get it. You're trying to paint the picture of what these kids are going through in their society versus what, in a sense, showing kind of like that mirror up to what our kids are, would be going through today as well. I mean, think about all the, the standardized testing they do, the kids today do. That's just, this is where your talent is. This is where your talent is. This is where you're going to be best served. And it's, I mean, I get that they're just trying to build the world out, but I also feel like you might have could have done a little bit better with the time with some of the kids, just to kind of build them up more. But obviously, we still have more episodes to go, and we're going to see growth through that. Beyond that, thinking about it, really, it's like I said, it's just little nitpicky things, little small things, that really doesn't really jump out in just, it just doesn't jump out to me. And so it's really just because of that, like I said, just like that whole one scene really was just really the only issue I may have had. But for the most part, I thoroughly enjoyed the episode enough to where, again, I didn't pick up my phone. So, like I said, not many cons.
In a society where there are always things trying to grab our attention, and our phones are constantly buzzing with emails and social media notifications and text messages and whatnot, to not give it any kind of time of day or relative attention for, how long was that first episode? 42 minutes, something like that. 44, not including
close. Oh, not including, it's probably about 44 then.
Yeah, not including credits, to not give any attention to your phone for 3/4 of an hour. It's pretty damn impressive these days.
For sure, it's hard to do. I too didn't touch my phone during that first episode. I think the only con I really have is something Johnny, I think, mentioned off the top, is I kind of wish like just both episodes were one, right? Like just do you want to launch the show, then maybe combine the first two episodes and get yourself in the wheelhouse of that like 65 that House of the Dragon level runtime to begin with, and then move on to episode two. But other than that, I I don't have anything to. I thought I was going to be getting on here fucking shitting on the show tonight, right? So, with everything that's been out there for a year, but I can honestly say, based off of the combined first two episodes, um, internet and insiders appear to be wrong on this one so far.
So if I can pose a theory or even just a hypothesis as to why we seem to have general pleasant impressions of this, as opposed to some of the highly debated topics that have come up in Acolyte and Ahsoka and even Obi-Wan to a certain extent. Do you feel like part of the reason why we are more generally accepting of this story being told is because it's not really connected to anything else, and therefore we have no expectations of connectivity? We're just watching something in this universe for what it is.
Yeah, for sure. I think I made the comment to Jade where it's like normally I'd be like, oh, maybe we hope this character comes in or that character comes in. Not to say that that's not going to happen, but like it's a show that's based what like 6 years now after Return of the Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like you said, it is what it is. Like it draws off of, not that I would know, Goonies, Strangers, a little bit of ET, Amblin, um, Pirates of the Caribbean. I think we've had Treasure Planet and Treasure Island both mentioned.
Star Trek.
Star Trek. Like A New Hope obviously is all over the beginning of the first episode. It it just was pleasant. And you mentioned comedy earlier. Like it wasn't like you were laughing your ass off because you couldn't catch your breath or anything, though, but it was good. Like it just felt like you know Star Wars comedy almost, like Han and Empire and like
Mm-hmm.
things. It wasn't. They weren't beating you over the head with it, and I appreciate that a lot. Like for me, actually, I'll save it. Let's get to our. I don't have my notes because I'm using my phone to do this, but I believe we're on to favorite character of the episode, right?
Yes.
I believe so. Yeah.
Character, scene, and rating.
All right, Randy, you lead this one off, man. Maybe give us
So-
your favorite character and favorite scene. We'll shorten it up a bit.
So, favorite character so far was, especially in episode one, was SM-33. For some odd reason, that Star Wars lately gets droids right and gives them a lot of personality. And I liked, even though it was a brief scene with him, even though he was briefly in the first episode, he's the one that kind of captured my attention the most. As for a favorite scene, obviously the opening scene, just the homage to the opening scene to A New Hope, that whole entire scene just really blew me away and really kind of is what captured my attention the most, to sit, just kind of just strap in and ready to watch the show rather than, oh, here's my phone. No, I literally, that scene just glued me to the set. He's like, okay, I think we got something here.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, I definitely agree. I have a hard time with the characters, though, fellas. Even now, if I'm picking one, I'm picking one just for the sake of picking one, right? Like I really like Neil. He's fun. Like he's just a fun Star Wars character. I don't think he's going to be met with. I'm sure he'll be met with all sorts of Jar Jar Binks type takes from grifters, but like he's just fun, right? Like so. But I like all the kids, and I think one of the relatable things for me, had the bus driver moment there for during the one scene. So that
I was going to say the
reminded me
bus
of
driver droid would probably be yours.
Um, but is the kids, right? So like the kids for me, I just want to pull up the names so I don't butcher these. Um, so when I look at Wim, Wim reminds me of Jensen, you know, my 4-year-old who's in school now, and obviously he's a little younger than Wim, but it very similar personalities. Like, please don't touch that. Sure enough, he's gonna go touch that. And then Fern reminds me of my daughter. Um, although she's only 2, very much same type of attitude, a little bit of a bully. Um, and that's probably another reason why I'm glowing about the show a little bit. Is it does remind me of my kids a bit, and that's nice. Johnny, what about you, man? Character and scene.
Well, I'm not gonna cop out and say all the kids. I'm gonna pick one. Uh, for me, it was Fern. Um, I think she had the best performance in the first episode. I think it established her character at the best of all of the gang of kids. And if I'm being honest, Wim was just a child I wanted to grab by the scruff of the neck and just shake a little bit, oh God, just quit being stupid, But that's the point of the character, right? It's meant to be that way. But for me, the
You know,
character
as a
was
guy who
Fern.
once got lost
But that's probably
at,
why I'm
at,
gonna grab
at,
him by
at
the
a
scruff of the neck and shake him.
lost. As I say, we can speak a little bit from personal experience. Getting lost here is our I'll be quick with this. Our teacher in grade 7 told us to stay with the group, not get lost. And sure enough, Johnny and I and a classmate of ours got lost. And guess what? They did not find us until the end of the trip. And we're in the woods, despite the woods only being probably about a 15-minute walk from Johnny's house. So, uh, um, pretty, yeah. A little relatable there, too.
We got lost in a creek, dude. We can't butter this up and make it sound good. We got lost in a creek that goes in 2 directions. One, we would have ended up in an airport. The other, we would have ended up back where we started. Like it just. There's
And
really
yet
no
they
way to make
couldn't
us
find
sound
us.
good in that story. But no, I mean that's part of the reason why. You can see yourself in doing the things that he did. And you're just like, just stop that. Just listen to people and stop being stupid. But that's the reason why I liked Fern more, because she was funny, she was witty. She's that character in the classic '80s movie that you're like, yeah, you're gonna be the hero in this story, not the idiot. But it's Fern. She was my favorite. And favorite scene, it's easy when they're trying to open up the ship, which they think is a Jedi temple at that point. And Fern tells them the story that her grandpa told them, about the poisonous gas and them being buried alive in there. And she whacks with the shovel. I love that whole scene. I was chuckling the whole way. Everything about that scene felt like it was ripped out of an '80s movie and put into this in the most amazing ways.
The whole thing about they called dibs on the outside of the ship, but they didn't call dibs on the inside. So as soon as we get inside, we'll take it back from them. And Neil looks at him and is like, "You are a genius." He's like, "I know. These girls are so dumb." And then you immediately cut to the girls and like, "These boys are so dumb."
Yeah.
Like that was such an 80s movies trope, and I did have a really fun time with that. I think for whatever reason, I think Neil is my favorite character. Like I don't know if there was any particular moment that about him that stood out to me, but he's a good student, he's a good brother, he's a good friend. And I like to think that I'm those things. And so maybe that's why I relate to him a little bit. He is probably a little bit of a stick in the mud at sometimes, and you'll have to ask my wife if I'm that way. Maybe I am. But yeah, I think Neil was my favorite character, and the opening sequence is just too good to not call my favorite scene. I mean, I wanted more of that, and I got a little bit more of it in episode 2. And so, to tease us with it in the first episode, give us a tonal shift, and then circle back to it, is a really nice piece of storytelling where I'm like, okay, You're not just gonna give me an amuse bouche. I'm gonna get a full meal of this later. So I appreciated that and enjoyed that in the first episode.
The one thing I hope they take from this is you can still do Star Wars. Now, it's not like Johnny mentioned if this is a movie. I'm not saying this would have made $1 billion at the box office. It's just too hard to predict. And I think you need more to bite onto there in terms of like some of the Star Wars lore to get that in, whether it's more Jedi being involved or Imperials, etc. But I do think this proves that if you develop characters and use your screen time appropriately,
Mm-hmm.
you don't need to lean on Obi-Wan, Luke, Yoda, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's 6 episodes left. They could all be terrible. I don't know. But so far it's a pretty damn good start, which correct me if I'm wrong, fellas, but does this not bring us to our rankings?
Yeah, our rating out of 10. Yes, sir.
All right. So with the Acolyte, we had rank the
Preemptive alert,
Neimoidians.
no one on this panel knows the rating system except Sean. We are going to hate it. We are going to laugh at it and say negative things about this scale because it's inevitably going to be stupid and awful, and we're going to hate it, but we're going to grudgingly go along with it because he's put the time into the graphics and made all this stuff. So, send all hate mail directly to Sean.
Well, like with the Acolyte, I kept it simple, unlike with Ahsoka. It's just out of 10. You're ranking out of 10 Ewoks, but here we are. Rank out of 10 Ewoks. Every 10 rating gets a free Darth M count watchable tattoo. Is someone dying?
Probably Johnny.
It's not Johnny. I'll tell you that.
All I heard is someone like choking.
That's Zach. Poor Zach.
Oh, it's Zach. Okay, I can't see anyone. So,
I'm gonna need alcohol after looking at that.
I only see 8 Ewoks. How can I rank out of 10 Ewoks if I don't know what the other 2 Ewoks are?
Jar Jar counts as 2.
Well, if you look really closely, you and Jar Jar are on there too, and you're honorary Ewoks in this one. So there's 10 on the midichlorians of the game there being held by the Ewok. That was on our Acolyte count too. So, Randy, why don't you lead us off, man? Give us a ranking out of 10 Ewoks.
All right, let me compose myself. I'm just trying. There's so much going on in this picture that my brain is. Yeah.
By the way, you can't tell because I made the Ewoks too damn big, but they're on Nar Shaddaa, which felt fitting for this story. So,
is that Johnny
True.
Walker in one of its hands?
That is definitely Johnny Walker Black.
So
I'm concerned the swag has both a blunt and a bong. That man has problems.
And alcohol in the other hand. It's like he's literally out of orifices and means to handle it. Okay, but how many of them have 1, 2, 3, 4? Okay, are any of them related by any chance?
I mean, it's very possible considering what Ewok Village is like.
4 of them have doobies, so if they are related, they're the Doobie Brothers.
Lead us off here, Randy.
So, really thinking about it, I'm gonna start off with a solid 7, just because it's not like blowing me out of the water, but it's good enough to keep me interested and just want to push forward with the series and kind of see where everything goes.
I'm a spooky kitty. I have absolutely no idea who that is. But hello, Melvin, if that's what you're doing.
Well, and thanks for the heads up too.
Yeah. Did you guys get raided by Knights of Melvin? I don't even know what that is. Someone's gonna have to. Anyways, Johnny out of 10, man. How many Ewoks are you giving it?
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm giving this a slotted sunglasses and doobie and a half out of 10 Ewoks. So that's a 7.5 for those of you keeping track mathematically of this ridiculous scale, where apparently I'm a 6 and Jar Jar is a 4, and 3D Ewok is right in the middle of the scale. Uh, so yeah, we're at slotted sunglasses and doobie mouth and a half out of 10.
Uh, um, Zach, what about you, man? How many Ewoks are you gonna give it?
I'm probably gonna follow with Randy. Like I want to give it an 8, but I just for whatever reason I'm hesitating to. So I'll go with a 7. I think it's solid. I think it's good. I think it's fun. I think it does what it needs to do. I don't think it's the very best Star Wars we've ever gotten, but I think it's a fun and good pilot. So I'll give it a solid 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it. I'm gonna give it. Sorry, I'm just taking a look at this now. Thanks, Zach. I just saw that. I'm going to give it 7 Ewoks and a Darth M count for 8. So 8 out of 10 for me. I thought it was very very good, and I was really impressed with it. So um, that's good. You know, it's hard to like Star Wars these days sometimes, and I'm glad we were able to come on here and talk about it. We already talked about a bunch of episode 2 already, but we'll dive into more of it now. Let's get into our pros of episode 2 and start off with Zach here.
It's easy for me. The pro of episode 2 is Port Borgo. I loved everything about that spaceport. It had a lot of things that were familiar about Star Wars, but it also had a lot of things that were unfamiliar, like having little ferries that take you from your ship instead of having a space dock that you immediately like land at. They made it different and yet also made it familiar. It had some elements that were very reminiscent of maybe like Port Royal from the original Pirates of the Caribbean, where there's a lot of different shops and vendors and things like that. But then you have a prison cell where you're trying to train a creature to go and get the key for you, and it reminded me of the dog that was holding the keys in the holding cell and in the first Pirates film. So it had a very swashbuckling feel to it. It had a lot of things that were reminiscent of some of the darker sides of Star Wars, and yet the camera work was very low to the ground, pointing upward, as if you were the same height as the kids looking at this big, vast, intimidating spaceport. And you're seeing it from their point of view. And so it was fun getting to see a new territory, and it was fun to see it from a very different point of view. So yeah, I think Port Borgo was the highlight of that second episode for me.
Yeah, I thought it reminded me more of Tortuga from Pirates 1.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
I'm gonna jump ahead in line here and say that was mine too, man. Everything about it, them first arriving, the special effects, the way the ships looked, it just looked like a real place, and they weren't filming, on the stagecraft stuff, which again sometimes is okay, but when you notice it and there's just not a whole lot of other objects there to fill in the space, it becomes painfully noticeable, and there was none of that in this. I really really loved that. How about you, Johnny?
Yeah, I mean it's the pirate port. Everything about it was the best part. It, like you guys said, it was bustling. It was what you'd expect a pirate port to be. Everything's moving, and seeing their interactions with people who don't know their planet exists. All of that stuff was fun. It was enjoyable, and it just it felt like you'd expect a pirate port to feel. It just, everything about it was fun. Like the you know the food scene, right, where they order, "I'll have what he's having," like just everything about that was funny. It was enjoyable. Seeing the kids sort of, you know, bumble and fumble around was awesome. Everything about it was what I want. It's what I'd hoped it would be like, as far as what this episode sort of promised. So it's that.
So here's really quickly before we go to Randy. I'm sorry, Randy, to cut you off. I found a quick little article from Screen Rant that talks about this place, and apparently it is referenced in Daniel Wallace's 2018 reference book called Star Wars Smuggler's Guide. It is just a footnote on one of the maps that is owned by Maz Kanata. And according to the map, says the article, Borgo Prime is situated near the Hydean Way, which is one of the most important hyperspace routes in the galaxy. There are known to be countless shadow ports along the Hydean Way, which are always frequented by pirates, and it is known to be close to planets we have seen before, most notably Navarro and Mandalore. So it's in that quadrant of the Outer Rim, and apparently it's been in the canon for a few years, and now we get our first actual look at it, which is pretty cool.
Randy, take it away, buddy.
So, you guys are hitting on, the port, which is obviously definitely one of the big pros. I love the creature work, like the how different all the pirates look and how well done. Doesn't look like it was rushed or hokey or some of the stuff we've seen in like from other series that deal with similar things. But it was just well done. The interaction with the kids, like just the way they're exploring and the kind of that look of wonder they have of seeing something they've never seen before is really, was really up there. I also just really enjoyed, just even though it was brief, but it's like that whole the Goonies vibe when they're running around trying to escape and they're just causing chaos. I mean, that's a huge pro for me from all of that as well. But to go along with this, like, the music and just the world building and the new lore that we're getting for, all those people out there that it's like wanting more lore, learning about At-Aten and how that it's such a myth and not even supposed to exist, yet it does. And it makes me think, okay, there's more to this planet than we know. And I hope we kind of delve into it more. Kind of same with the port as well, just because now we're getting more of it, even though previously it was just nothing but a blurb in a book. So the more lore we get, that's to me, for me, that's always a pro. But yeah, this episode was just a lot of fun, and it definitely had that Pirates of the Caribbean Goonies vibe going for it the entire time, which is always a plus in my book.
Did we all do pros? I believe so.
Yeah.
Let's go to cons. I'll kick it off. I think Johnny and I have the same one, but we'll see. Runtime. Look, I hate to go back to the same fucking thing, but runtime matters. Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, The Last of Us, Succession, all these big tentpole blockbuster massive budget shows with all sorts of sorry, my animals are doing whatever they can to interrupt us. But like, you don't see shows like that going, okay, here's our 44-minute debut, which is fine. If you told me every Star Wars episode now on is going to be 44 minutes, I could be fine with that. Probably should be. But when you go from 44 minutes to, what was episode 2? Like 25, maybe 27?
It's listed as 31 on Disney Plus, but you got to count 4 or 5 of that for credits.
Yeah,
32 minutes runtime, 6 minutes were remaining when the credits started. When I watched.
Yeah, and then the credits to begin with too. So realistically, it's probably about 24
26.
minutes. Yeah, 24 to 26 minutes. It's bullshit. That's an animated TV show That's an episode of Dragon Ball Z back in the day. It's an episode of Power Rangers. Um, you can't do that. Like, I love the second episode. I thought it was great, but I'm going to dock it points on rushing through it. Where I thought if they would have took the time like Watts did in episode one, it could have even been better. There's just no place in event television for live action event television anyway for like a 25-minute episode. It just takes away from it. I'm sure there's more coming. It's a Disney Plus thing that I know they've spoken about trying to get out of, but yeah, massive con for me. Other than that, I don't have any.
I guess
Yeah.
if your biggest complaint is I wanted more, that's that means there's not much to complain about.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I agree. For the second episode, the only complaint I have is the length. I wanted more of it. Either a longer episode or just combine it with the first episode. And
You're so lucky that
would've-
Mondo's not on this podcast, Johnny.
What?
It wasn't long enough. I wanted more of it.
Oh, see, yeah, okay. That's fair. Yeah. Yeah, he definitely would have had something to say there.
Sorry, I've been hanging out with that man too much. I spend too much time with that man. Sorry.
Well, I was talking to him tonight through the first episode a little bit, but we were talking wrestling, not Star Wars, so entirely different thing altogether. But yeah, the length of the episode just wasn't enough. If you'd have combined it with the first episode and just done, just one simultaneous run through of episode 1 and tacked it on to the end and hadn't done it would have come out to what, an hour and 5 minutes.
Mhm.
That's a much more palatable number for a premiere episode on, like Sean said, a premium television event. It's not 20. We shouldn't be getting 25 minutes of a primetime feature-length television series. That's a 30-minute sitcom. Like that's not what this is. That's not what it's presenting itself as. This is a primetime show. This is a tentpole. This is what you build your schedule around. And that should not be any less than 44 minutes.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I mean, you spent $200 million on 8 episodes. You better not have one popping out at 25 minutes. And Star Wars usually has 3 or 4 of them in the 8-episode stretch for their shows that, sure enough, are 25 minutes. You know what series doesn't give you 25-minute episodes? The one we're going to cover in April. Is it April? I think it's April. Maybe it's May. I don't know when it comes out. Andor. That one doesn't give you 25-minute episodes. So,
I was gonna say Star Trek. I've like every season of Discovery and every season of Strange New Worlds has been a minimum of 10 episodes, and each episode has
featuring
been
all of the old folks.
45 minutes to an hour, 45 to 55 minutes, not including credits, and those are 10 episode seasons, 10 plus, and this is 8 with fewer. So yeah, it's ridiculous. Like, you're looking at how long were the run times for Rings of Power? Like, Rings of Power was most recent sci-fi fantasy, and I feel very certain they did not have 25-minute episodes. So this is something that is strictly Disney Star Wars, and something that they definitely need to work on if they want to keep up with their competitors in the industry.
Completely agree. Who hasn't done cons? Sorry, I've lost track.
I mean, really, I have to just echo all three of you. The runtime, really, for this one, because literally, I'm sitting there and I'm like, "Don't you do it? Don't you? Oh, but I want more. I don't want to stop right now. We need to keep going. This is ridiculous." And yeah, I mean, so in a way, the episode did exactly what it meant to do. It left you wanting more, left you hungry for more, but yet at the same time doing it in such a way, because it felt short, but also you got a lot in there in that short amount of time, but that doesn't mean that it's okay to be to have that short amount of time to just for an episode. I felt like I felt like I blinked. If you had blinked, you'd have missed it. That's how fast it went. And yes, I had fun with it, but give me an extra 15 minutes. How hard is it to give me an extra 15 minutes to just kind of let things breathe a little bit rather than, hey, throw them in the brig and, oh, look, you're a Jedi, and then, be done with it. That's definitely the biggest con there is runtime.
So I do have one other small con that I want to pose before we move on. And I want to pose a theory as to why this con exists in this episode. I kind of wanted to see what was going on back in at Atten. I wanted to see the parents' concern for their kids being gone. But the story solely focused on them outside of the barrier, outside of the breach. And as we come to learn in the port, everybody's laughing at their supposed joke about how this is a, fantasy world. It's fake, it's a legend, it doesn't really exist, yada yada. Excuse me. I think the reason that we don't go back to Ad Atten to see what people's responses or reactions are to their disappearance is because Ad Atten exists outside of traditional space-time. Therefore, they are not at the point yet where they are freaking out about the kid's disappearance, because in their perception of time and reality, not as much time has elapsed as what the kids are experiencing at the spaceport. Therefore, it would not make sense to take a look at their reactions because very little time has elapsed.
You sure when you made that island reference earlier, you weren't talking about Lost? Because that's what you just described.
I'm also describing about 3 or 4 different Star Trek episodes. So, and maybe an episode of Doctor Who. And so it's not something that is outside of the realm of sci-fi reality. And this whole space barrier that they broke through, and the fact that they're talking about this thing as if it's a lost planet or something. This suburban Star Wars that we're experiencing on this planet is something of a bygone era, and the rest of the galaxy is passing them by at a much quicker rate than what's transpiring down on the planet. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, it could be that for sure. I mean, there's definitely something nefarious going on with Aten. And you can't even see stars in the sky at night, right? Like you just see the barrier.
Correct.
There's I know Johnny doesn't want this to lead into a Palpatine thing. I don't think it'll directly be somehow Palpatine's return. But there's definitely something going on that's not on the level that I think we're gonna find. Even the way like they talk about their jobs and their careers, and like a lot of it leads to there's something more here, and hopefully we do find
I'll,
that out.
I'll clarify for Palpatine. It's more of a, I don't want this to be tied into the and somehow Palpatine survived
You
story.
know,
I don't
you
want it to
know,
be anything to do with that.
I think you just have something against people with the name Sheev.
How many people
Well,
with the
seeing as
name
how the
Sheev
only
does he
person I know
know?
named Sheev is Palpatine, okay, sure. I have a thing against people named Sheev. If there's anyone watching this who happens to be named Sheev,
He doesn't
I'm
like you.
sorry. It's not you, it's Palpatine. He's my problem.
Oh, I
He's my
thought you were gonna
Sheev
give rid of
problem.
them. It's not you, it's me.
No.
I
It's not
invented
you,
that.
it's Palpatine.
This planet definitely feels like it is clearly removed from time itself, because there's no talk of the war. There's no, whether it's be the old republic or the rebellion, there's just nothing there. There's you would think
I'll point out this is something that I noticed. The droids on at Aden sounded an awful lot like clone droids.
Yeah, to a
Like Clone
degree.
War era droids. They very much sounded like that sort of, Roger Roger-esque vocal tone and pattern is something that I picked up on. And at the time I thought, oh well, that's just a cool head nod. Like, oh, they sound like the Clone War era droids. But now that we're talking about this, maybe there is something to that.
Well, if they're not talking about a war, perhaps it's because one hasn't started yet. Their planet was in a time of peace, and so I will echo my posit that this may be set in the High Republic. Because aside from the conflicts with the Nihil, there's not even a threat of the Sith during the time of the High Republic. And so
I mean,
I
is there? I mean, we did get the acolyte, right?
no, we didn't. We're not talking about that. We're talking about Skeleton Crew today.
I'm just talking High Republic era stuff.
So if they are in this era of peace and they're just talking about making a difference for your community, and the fact that there are no peacekeepers, there's no police or anything like that, like that's just what security droids are for, they say in that first episode. Like, there's no need for soldiers, there's no need for peacekeepers, marshals, police, anything like that. Like, they are living in some sort of a utopia that exists outside of wartime, and therefore this lost planet could be a lot older than we believe it to be.
Yeah, very much so. I think that'll be a big reveal that comes later. I wish I could say I know what it is. I don't, but I like Zach's thoughts on it. Let's move this thing along here, guys. We gotta get wrapping up. Favorite character and scene from episode 2, Zach.
I liked Neil in the first episode. I don't think he has as much to do in this episode, so I'll probably give the nod to Fern. She really steps up as a leader in this episode. She really kind of takes charge in the port and tries to keep everybody together. She's sort of the group mom of this adventure to an extent. And even if Wim is kind of flying by the seat of his pants, like, she's the one that's trying to like think things through, and it doesn't always work out, but I appreciate her moxie, and I appreciate that even the grown-up adult pirates that she encounters recognize and appreciate her moxie as well. I think that's going to pay dividends in the long run. She's earning the respect of grown-ups, and I think that's going to pay off later on in the show.
Johnny?
I think for me, this one, I think my favorite scene is everything from the point where Wim gives the credit to the shopkeep, cook, through to the end of them getting tossed into the brig. I think I'll sort of say that, like, there's one long extended sequence for me. That is my favorite of that episode. Just because there's so much going on in that you get to see these pirates a bit more fleshed out in, at present as they constructed out. The concern about the credits and the mint condition Republic credits, old Republic credits. It asks a lot of questions, doesn't really answer any.
Mm-hmm.
But they're all appropriately timed for the questions that they're asking, and the characters were fun. I enjoyed the interactions. Which brings me into my favorite character of the episode quite nicely, which for episode 2, it was SM-33. When he walked out on the scene, with the gravitas to leave my captain alone, all of that, and then goes on to kick ass until he, gets shot and falls over. He was my favorite character in that episode, and it was just it. Excuse me. It was Nick Frost at his most Nick Frost, So it was a great performance. I loved it. It was SM-33 is my favorite character.
Okay, guys, cherish this moment. I'm about to make a KOTOR reference. I was ready. I hope I am. I don't know. What the hell? Where the the hell did that even come from? I know he's not the same droid type. I know he's not. But I so wanted during that encounter for SM-33 to call somebody a meatbag.
That would have been amazing.
Man, I'll go one step further. I think they could have used HK-47 in this, depending how far away from, like, if Zach's theory is right about the time and stuff and how it's not set. Like, that would have been really cool to see that happen. But yeah.
Well, think about it. 2 consonants followed by 2 letters. We may not be that far off. 2 consonants and then 2 numbers. I said 2 letters, didn't I? It's getting late.
There it is. Who hasn't gone yet? I've lost track.
That would be me. So yeah, definitely this episode I felt like Fern got to shine a little bit more, for the very reasons that Zach was talking about, just stepping up as a leader, gaining respect, bailing everybody out as best she can before they get tossed in the brig. As far as scene goes, SM-33's fight scene where he's just absolutely kicking everybody's ass until he gets shot. It was a fun scene. It really just kind of, as Johnny said, let Nick Frost be Nick Frost and just kind of really have fun with it. And there was just an overall fun. I mean, the whole episode on in the port was fun, but just having to narrow it down to that was painful, because I really could have been like, it starts here and it ends here. So I just trying to pick that like one little scene.
Yeah, I mean, not to cherry pick off others, but like SM-33 for me definitely gets episode 2, and that initial arrival at the spaceport and how it's shot. Might not seem like a big deal to others, but when you're heavily critical about Star Wars looking like it's been filmed in a shoebox recently, and you see visuals like that arriving at the port, it's inspiring and it's nice and it feels big again. It feels like you're in a big galaxy. So that's it for me. Which brings us to our wonderful Ewok ranking system. Out of 10, episode 2. Johnny, give it to us, baby.
It is hidden Ewok with no blunt and one eye looking like he's about to murder you. Out of 10. So for those keeping mathematical track, that's an 8 out of 10 on a normal scale. But it's half hidden Ewok with the murderous eyes out of 10.
I believe that's Wicket. It looks like Wicket.
It's Wicket with an old-fashioned.
Randy,
you can't see what he's holding.
So obviously I felt like this, minus the major con, because like you said, Sean, it's going to get deducted because of the runtime. But overall, I'm going to have to give this an 8.5 because I enjoyed this episode so much more than I did the first one. But that runtime just kind of knocked a little bit off. It's unfortunate.
Wow, 8.5, huh? That's impressive. Zach, what about you, man? What are you giving it out of 10 Ewoks, my dude?
Yeah, this one is going to be an improvement on the first episode as well. You've established your characters, you've built on them, and now you're building on the story, you're building on the lore, you're building on the planet that they're trying to get back to. This is what a second episode is supposed to be, minus 10 minutes or so, 10 to 15 minutes. So I'm going to go with an 8 out of 10 for this one. I think it's a great continuation of the story. It's a great continuation of our characters, our adventure. You introduce Jod at the end of the episode to kind of let you know what you're headed for next. It does what I feel like a second episode is supposed to do. It builds and it introduces new characters and it leaves you wanting more. So that's a really solid second episode, and it'll be 8 Ewoks out of 10 stoners for me.
I'm gonna give it 7 Ewoks and a half of McMahon on the midichlorians of the game cover. So 7.5 for me out of 10 for this one. Had it been 10 or 15 minutes longer, it might have been a 9 or 10, depending on how they use that time. So either way, I think it's about as impressive of a debut as you could have expected out of a show that had not a whole lot of hype behind it, and had been delayed for an entire year. Let's not forget this thing was supposed to come out December last year, came out December this year. So I'm happy. Looking forward to doing more of these with you fellas and seeing how it all plays out. But that is going to do it for us. Let us know when you watch this what you thought of episodes 1 and 2 of Skeleton Crew down below. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications to all to keep up with all of our content. Check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/fandomempire. And where can everybody find you at, Zach?
Just the username in the lower third at Zach the Voice. I'm on pretty much all the socials that way. I just got a Blue Sky account. I don't really know what I'm doing over there, but everywhere else it's ZACH the Voice, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all that good stuff. On Blue Sky, I think you had to put a TX at the end of it. Somebody else took my username before I could join, so it's Zach the Voice TX over there. But I'm kind of in between sports right now, but I'm still trying to post stuff on the different socials. So if anything like this comes up, that'll be the first place you find out.
Awesome, dude. What about you, Johnny? Where can everybody find you at?
Oh, you can find me here, there, and everywhere. Twitch.tv/bros before pros. Next week, Indiana Jones. In your face. Might even this weekend, new zombies map. I might even stream a little bit of that.
Randy?
So you can find me over on X at Giggity Giles. I've slowed down a little bit on posting, but now that we got some good Star Wars content, I think I might have to start posting my thoughts on there again weekly, since NFL season is in full swing. My friends and I are doing the Sports Brew podcast. Just Google Sports and Brew. If you enjoy drinking, BS, and sports, it's a good fun time.
You can check out Skeleton Crew review episodes every Tuesday here, probably around 10 p.m. Eastern for the next 6 weeks or so, if it is 6 weeks in a row that they release. And you'll be able to check out further Supernatural review episodes with Tommy and I, eventually one with McMahon getting posted. That will pick up again this week. And then over on our Legacy of Westeros channel, once the new year hits, we will continue with our Game of Thrones rewatch when it's a little less crazy with our schedules.
For real.
It's Christmas time. Anyways, though, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for coming out. And if you didn't make it live and you're watching after this fact, thank you. It's appreciated. But for Zach, Johnny, and Randy, I'm Sean. We'll see you next time when the Empire calls.